On September 15, 2010, Redwood, Oregon, the Donaldson family residence was hosting Amber Donaldson's 14th birthday celebration. The event gathered 7 of Amber's classmates from Redwood Private Academy and their neighbors, Robert Harrison, 43, and his wife Mary Harrison, 39, who lived in the house next door. The celebration was meticulously documented in photographs taken by Mary Harrison, who had become something of an unofficial family photographer since moving to the neighborhood. Dr. Thomas Donaldson, 45, a cardiothoracic surgeon at Redwood Memorial Hospital, had planned the celebration for his only daughter. At 7:30 p.m., in the family's living room decorated with blue and silver balloons, Amber's favorite colors, he presented her with a sterling silver bracelet. The piece featured a custom engraving reading, "My Precious Amber," and was adorned with a caduceus charm, symbolizing her father's medical profession. 3 days later, on September 18, 2010, Amber attended her regular violin lesson at the Redwood School of Music. The school's surveillance system recorded her exit at 6:27 p.m. The footage shows Amber in her school uniform, a navy blazer with the Redwood Private Academy crest, plaid skirt, and black shoes. She carried a backpack and her violin case. The footage would later become crucial evidence, as it established Amber's exact appearance at the time of her disappearance and confirmed she was alone when leaving the music school. At 6:45 p.m., Amber's phone ceased responding to calls and text messages. Cell tower data indicated her last known location in the eastern part of the neighborhood. Dr. Donaldson, who had expected Amber home for dinner, began calling her friends when she didn't arrive. For several hours, he drove through the neighborhood, checking the route between the music school and their home multiple times. During this time, he also contacted Robert Harrison, who immediately joined the search, driving through adjacent neighborhoods and local parks. Dr. Donaldson contacted the Redwood Police Department at 9:15 p.m. Officer Sarah Martinez took the initial missing persons report. The report noted that Amber was last seen wearing her school uniform, carrying a violin case and a backpack containing sheet music and school materials. Her physical description was recorded as height 5 feet 4 inches, weight 110 pounds, brown hair worn in a ponytail, blue eyes, and notably, wearing the silver bracelet with caduceus charm. The officer noted Dr. Donaldson's increasing distress and the unusual nature of Amber's disappearance, given her reliable character and strict routine. The Redwood Police Department immediately initiated standard missing person protocols. They dispatched patrol units to canvass the area between the music school and the Donaldson residence, a distance of approximately 1 mile. Officers interviewed Amber's violin instructor, who confirmed she left the building at 6:27 p.m. after completing her lesson. The instructor noted that Amber had been in good spirits, discussing an upcoming recital and practicing a particularly challenging piece by Bach. During the initial investigation, detectives noted several peculiar circumstances. Amber's regular route home from music lessons took her past well-populated areas, including a shopping center and several residential streets. Yet no witnesses came forward reporting having seen her after she left the music school. Her phone, violin, and backpack were never recovered, despite extensive searches of the surrounding area. Most significantly, the complete cessation of her phone activity at 6:45 p.m. suggested an abrupt and possibly violent interruption to her journey home, though no signs of struggle were found along her known route. The Donaldson family's story in Redwood began in 2004. Following the death of Linda Donaldson from acute myeloid leukemia in Seattle, Thomas Donaldson made the difficult decision to relocate with his 8-year-old daughter Amber to Redwood, Oregon. The move represented both an escape from painful memories and an opportunity to rebuild their lives in a smaller, more close-knit community. Linda's battle with leukemia had been brief but devastating. Medical records from Seattle General Hospital documented a rapid decline over 6 months, during which Thomas balanced his duties as a cardiothoracic surgeon with caring for his dying wife and young daughter. Former colleagues described him as a man who never missed a surgery despite his personal struggles, often sleeping in his office between hospital shifts and home care duties. In Redwood, Thomas focused entirely on creating stability for Amber. He secured a position as head of cardiothoracic surgery at Redwood Memorial Hospital, allowing him to maintain a more predictable schedule than his previous role in Seattle. He purchased a 2-story house in a respected suburban neighborhood, specifically chosen for its proximity to Redwood Private Academy, where he enrolled Amber. The school's strong music program particularly appealed to Amber, who had begun violin lessons at age 6. The arrival of Robert and Mary Harrison as next-door neighbors in 2007 initially seemed like a fortunate development for the Donaldsons. Robert, who operated his own automotive repair business, presented himself as a self-made businessman. His garage, which specialized in luxury car maintenance, quickly became popular among Redwood's affluent residents. Mary secured a position teaching literature at Redwood Private Academy, where she made a particular effort to mentor Amber. The Harrisons, unable to have children due to medical complications, appeared to channel their parental instincts toward Amber. They regularly invited her for afternoon tea, helped with homework, and attended her violin recitals. Mary often brought home-baked cookies to Amber's practices, while Robert offered to drive her to music lessons when Thomas was delayed at the hospital. The Harrisons' attention seemed like a blessing to Thomas, who appreciated having trusted adults watching over his daughter. However, subsequent police investigation would reveal disturbing patterns in the Harrisons' past. Between 1997 and 2007, they had resided in 5 different cities across the western United States. Their departures often coincided with local missing persons cases involving young girls, though this connection wouldn't be discovered until years later. In each location, they had integrated themselves into their communities, particularly focusing on families with young daughters. The Harrisons' documented residences included Portland, Oregon, 1997 to 1999, Boise, Idaho, 1999 to 2001, Salt Lake City, Utah, 2001 to 2003. In each city, they established similar patterns. Robert would open an automotive repair business, and Mary would seek employment at local schools or youth organizations. They consistently volunteered for community events and became active in local churches or civic organizations. Law enforcement records would eventually show that in 3 of these cities, girls between the ages of 12 and 15 had disappeared within months of the Harrisons' departure. However, without evidence linking them to the disappearances, and due to the geographical spread of the cases, the pattern went unnoticed by authorities for years. The Harrisons' carefully cultivated image as caring, community-minded citizens effectively masked their true nature, allowing them to continue their pattern of predatory behavior undetected. For the Donaldsons, the Harrisons represented an extension of family, filling roles left vacant by Linda's death. Thomas saw them as trusted friends who helped maintain normalcy in Amber's life, never suspecting that he had inadvertently invited predators into their inner circle. Between 2010 and 2020, Robert Harrison orchestrated an elaborate facade of concern and dedication to finding Amber Donaldson. Within weeks of her disappearance, he established the Amber Donaldson Search Foundation, which quickly gained support from the Redwood community. The foundation, operating with an annual budget of $100,000 from local donations, became the centerpiece of Harrison's carefully constructed public image as a grieving family friend determined to find answers. His automotive repair garage became a makeshift headquarters for the search effort, its walls covered with dozens of posters featuring Amber's photograph. Harrison chose a particular school photo of Amber for these posters, one taken just weeks before her disappearance, showing her in her school uniform with a gentle smile. This image became iconic in the local media coverage, appearing on everything from billboards to newspaper articles. When investigators began examining Harrison's alibi for the day of Amber's disappearance in 2012, he masterfully deflected attention by launching a public campaign portraying himself as a victim of overzealous police work. He organized a rally in Redwood's town square that drew more than 500 supporters. The local newspaper, the Redwood Chronicle, published a series of sympathetic articles highlighting his tireless efforts to find Amber and questioning the police department's investigative priorities. Thomas Donaldson attended each of these memorial events, sitting in the front row, unaware that the man organizing these tributes was responsible for his daughter's death. Harrison would often place a comforting hand on Donaldson's shoulder during particularly emotional moments, maintaining eye contact as he spoke about never giving up hope. This psychological manipulation extended beyond the public events. Harrison regularly invited Donaldson to foundation meetings, included him in search planning sessions, and consulted him on new initiatives to keep Amber's case active. The Foundation's activities were meticulously documented. Harrison maintained detailed records of every search operation, every media appearance, and every dollar spent. This apparent transparency helped deflect any suspicion, as it seemed inconsistent with someone hiding criminal activity. He created annual reports highlighting the Foundation's efforts, complete with photographs of search teams, copies of media coverage, and financial statements showing how donations were spent. Law enforcement officials later noted that Harrison's behavior represented a textbook case of a perpetrator inserting himself into an investigation. However, his performance was so convincing that it fooled not only the public, but also experienced detectives. He provided detailed, consistent accounts of his movements on the day of Amber's disappearance, backed by seemingly solid alibi witnesses, most of whom were regular customers at his garage who had become Foundation supporters. The investigation repeatedly hit dead ends. Despite multiple searches of the area, including the use of cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar, no trace of Amber was found. Investigators interviewed hundreds of witnesses, followed up on countless tips, and explored various theories, but Harrison's involvement remained undetected. His careful planning and ongoing public presence effectively diverted attention from his role in the crime. Throughout these 10 years, Harrison maintained regular contact with other families of missing children, positioning himself as an expert in organizing searches and maintaining public interest in cold cases. He attended conferences on missing persons, consulted with other search organizations, and built a network of contacts in law enforcement and media, all while knowing exactly what had happened to Amber Donaldson on that September evening in 2010. On August 26, 2020, what began as a routine meeting between neighbors, Thomas Donaldson arrived at the Harrison residence at 2:45 p.m., carrying documents for an upcoming search operation planned by the Amber Donaldson Search Foundation. This was to be their 10th annual memorial event, marking a decade since Amber's disappearance. The Harrisons' living room, where countless Foundation meetings had taken place over the years, remained largely unchanged since 2010. Robert Harrison had carefully maintained its appearance, ensuring it projected an image of steady dedication to finding Amber. However, that afternoon, a new addition to the room's decor would shatter the carefully constructed facade. While waiting for Robert to return from a brief errand, Thomas noticed a recently placed photograph on the mantelpiece. The silver frame contained a picture from Amber's final birthday celebration, showing her proudly displaying her new bracelet. As Thomas moved closer to examine the photograph, something behind the frame caught his attention. Moving the frame aside, he discovered Amber's silver bracelet, the distinctive piece he had given her just 3 days before her disappearance, complete with its "My Precious Amber" engraving and the caduceus charm. The significance of this discovery was immediate and devastating. For 10 years, this bracelet had been a key identifying item in Amber's missing person case. Its distinctive design had been described in countless police reports, news articles, and search bulletins. Thomas had specifically chosen the caduceus charm to represent their family's medical heritage, making it uniquely identifiable. Robert Harrison returned to find Thomas standing motionless at the mantelpiece, the bracelet in his trembling hands. "Where did you get this?" Thomas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air, heavy with 10 years of grief and betrayal. Harrison's face drained of color as he realized his fatal mistake. He had kept the bracelet as a trophy, hidden for a decade, only to carelessly leave it exposed during recent household cleaning. Harrison attempted to formulate an explanation, but the words died in his throat as he met Thomas's gaze. In that moment of silent recognition, both men understood the truth that had been hidden for 10 years. The man who had organized searches, hosted memorials, and consoled the grieving father was the very person responsible for Amber's disappearance and death. Without speaking another word, Thomas reached into his jacket and withdrew a pistol, a weapon he had carried legally since shortly after Amber's disappearance. The single gunshot that followed echoed through the quiet suburban street at 3:17 p.m. The bullet struck Harrison in the chest, causing immediate and fatal damage. Neighbors, hearing the gunshot, immediately contacted law enforcement. Multiple calls flooded the Redwood Police Department's emergency line, reporting the sound of gunfire from the Harrison residence. First responders arrived within minutes to find an eerily calm scene. Thomas Donaldson made no attempt to flee or resist arrest. When officers entered the house at 3:24 p.m., they found him seated in an armchair, still gripping Amber's bracelet in one hand. Robert Harrison's body lay on the floor several feet away, a single bullet wound in his chest. Thomas remained silent as officers secured the scene, his eyes fixed on the bracelet that had finally revealed the truth he had feared for 10 years. The responding officers noted in their report that Thomas appeared to be in a state of shock, displaying an unusual calmness that often follows extreme emotional trauma. He surrendered without resistance, still clutching the bracelet that had triggered the confrontation. As he was led from the house in handcuffs, neighbors who had gathered outside witnessed a man who appeared to have aged decades in a single afternoon. Following the shooting of Robert Harrison, the Redwood Police Department launched a comprehensive investigation into both his death and Amber Donaldson's decade-old disappearance. The Major Crimes Unit, led by Detective Michael Sullivan, obtained a search warrant for the Harrison residence within hours of the shooting. The initial search revealed something extraordinary. Behind what appeared to be a solid wall in Harrison's basement, investigators discovered a concealed room accessed through a hidden panel. The space, measuring approximately 10 by 12 feet, contained disturbing evidence of Harrison's obsession with Amber Donaldson. More than 140 photographs covered the walls, many taken without Amber's knowledge, outside her school, during violin practice, and through windows of her home. The collection spanned several years, predating her disappearance. Within this hidden shrine, investigators found Amber's personal items, her diary, school notebooks, and several strands of hair preserved in plastic bags. Forensic analysis confirmed the hair samples matched Amber's DNA profile, which had been stored in the missing persons database. The diary's final entry was dated September 17, 2010, the day before her disappearance. The investigation took a crucial turn when officers noticed recently installed paving stones in the Harrisons' backyard. Ground-penetrating radar indicated anomalies beneath the surface. Upon removing the pavers and excavating to a depth of 1.8 meters, investigators made the devastating discovery of Amber's remains. She had been buried less than 30 meters from her own home, while her father attended countless foundation meetings in the house above her grave. The medical examiner's report confirmed Amber's identity through dental records and DNA analysis. The cause of death was determined to be mechanical asphyxiation. Trace evidence suggested she had been killed within hours of her disappearance. The autopsy revealed that Amber was still wearing her school uniform at the time of death, and microscopic fibers matched those from Harrison's garage. Parallel to this investigation, detectives examined Thomas Donaldson's shooting of Harrison. Surveillance footage from neighboring houses captured Donaldson's arrival and departure from the Harrison residence. Witness statements from neighbors confirmed hearing a single gunshot. Ballistic analysis matched the bullet to a registered firearm purchased by Donaldson 1 month after Amber's disappearance. Mary Harrison, who was teaching at a conference during the shooting, was taken into custody upon her return to Redwood. During interrogation, she maintained ignorance of her husband's crimes, though investigators found this claim difficult to reconcile with evidence found in their home. The hidden room would have been impossible to miss during normal household activities, and financial records showed suspicious purchases made with her credit cards. Forensic analysis of Harrison's garage computer revealed encrypted folders containing additional photographs of Amber and other unidentified young girls. Digital timestamps indicated some photos were taken months before the Harrisons moved to Redwood, suggesting a pattern of stalking behavior that preceded their arrival. The investigation also uncovered Harrison's manipulation of the Amber Donaldson Search Foundation. Financial records showed that while most funds were used for legitimate search efforts, significant amounts were diverted through various accounts. These funds had financed Harrison's surveillance equipment and enabled him to maintain his facade of concerned citizen while monitoring the investigation's progress. The trial of Thomas Donaldson began on January 12, 2021, in the Redwood County Courthouse. District Attorney Catherine Morton led the prosecution, seeking a first-degree murder conviction, while renowned defense attorney James Bennett represented Donaldson. The case attracted national media attention, with major networks broadcasting daily from the courthouse steps. The prosecution presented a methodical case, establishing premeditation through evidence found in Donaldson's home. They highlighted his detailed surveillance of Harrison, the legal purchase of the firearm shortly after Amber's disappearance, and his calm demeanor following the shooting. Morton argued that the calculated nature of the killing demanded the maximum penalty, regardless of the circumstances that motivated it. The defense strategy focused on Donaldson's psychological state and the extraordinary circumstances surrounding the case. Bennett called expert witnesses who testified about the profound psychological impact of losing a child and the additional trauma of discovering the killer had been masquerading as a family friend for a decade. Particularly compelling was the testimony of Dr. Eleanor Richards, a forensic psychiatrist, who described the acute psychological break Donaldson experienced upon finding Amber's bracelet. The turning point came when the defense presented evidence from the hidden room in Harrison's house. Photographs of the shrine-like space, with its hundreds of secretly taken photos of Amber, profoundly affected the jury. The medical examiner's testimony about Amber's cause of death and the revelation that she had been buried mere steps from her home for 10 years created palpable tension in the courtroom. After 7 days of testimony, the jury began deliberations. Their unprecedented 72-hour deliberation reflected the complex moral and legal questions at stake. When they finally emerged, their verdict acknowledged both the premeditated nature of the killing and the extraordinary circumstances that led to it. The court sentenced Thomas Donaldson to 35 years with possibility of parole. Judge William Martinez, in his sentencing statement, acknowledged the unique circumstances of the case while emphasizing that vigilante justice could not be condoned. Donaldson's final statement to the court became headline news. "I don't regret what I did. For 10 years, that man looked me in the eyes, knowing he had killed my little girl." Thomas Donaldson began serving his sentence at the Oregon State Penitentiary in March 2021. Amber's bracelet was returned to him and remains his only permitted personal item in his cell, a bittersweet reminder of both his greatest loss and the actions it ultimately drove him to take.